At last it is time to set my plan in motion. I shall reveal to them a bounty hunter guide, and then never release it. Oh, I'm fine. What's this? That's right, folks. I'm back. It's Van Lee of the Bootu Inc. Studios here. It's been, a year since I've put out a Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video? Shame on me, but you know what? Good things come to those who wait. And I'm going to hopefully start pumping out some more of this content over the following weeks. But who knows? Maybe we'll see you again next year with more Galaxy of Heroes content. On today's video, we're going to be discussing Fennec Shand, of course, the bounty hunter introduced in The Mandalorian Season 1, played by Ming-Na Wen, who is awesome. She's a great character in real life and a great character in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and I will tell you why. We're going to, of course, cover an overview of the character, what she does, how she does it. We'll talk modding, we'll talk fun facts, her best teammates, synergies, all kinds of stuff to get you prepared to determine whether or not you need to upgrade this character. Now, you might be asking yourself, Van, why are you just now doing a Fennec Shand video? She was released, a couple months ago? Well, that's because I don't have that Arnold scratch floating around, and I'm not going to blow $500 on a marquee. I just now got her to Relic 3, therefore I just got her to 7 stars, and I'm fully prepared to give you the analysis that you deserve. So let's get into this and talk Fennec Shand. Okay, let's start with the abilities. Now, I'm not going to read you every detail of the abilities. You can do that yourself, but I will tell you essentially what it does, when you should use it, the important aspects of the ability, and we're going to start with the basic attack, Crushing Strike. Now, the cool thing that Crushing Strike does is it deals damage 5 times. The important aspect of that is that for bounty hunter leads who require multiple hits, this is going to give you 5 ticks towards getting that payout off, and that is massive. Bounty hunters tend to be pretty squishy until you get the payouts off, and, that gives offense, that gives all sorts of benefits depending on who you're using as a leader, and this makes it happen that much quicker. Sometimes you can actually get a payout to finish in the first turn if you're doing it just right, so this is massive. This makes bounty hunters get to that payout so much quicker. One item of note here is that it also does special damage. In fact, all of her damaging abilities do special damage, and that's kind of weird considering this is basically a kick, but it's good because it will do additional damage thanks to the fact that there's less defense, or resistance, I should say, with special attacks. And although this move doesn't do a ton of damage early on, once you've got the team going, particularly with bounty hunters, you're going to start seeing the damage ramp up quite a bit. I mean, I've seen each stack of this essentially do 40,000 damage, and that's massive. But again, the most important aspect of this attack is that you're going to do damage 5 times. The special ability I Don't Miss is an AoE that deals damage to everyone on the opposing team minus the weakest enemy, but then it also deals damage to the weakest enemy with a little bit of an offensive boost depending on how many enemies were hit. This will also spread Overconfident, the buff that is exclusive to Fennec Shand, to your bounty hunters and scoundrels, as well as inflict Armor Shred, and that's a big one. With the defense changing a few months ago, Armor Shred is becoming even more important. So this is a good ability to use if you're still trying to get a payout off and you can't target the person you want to because it is an AoE, but it's also a good one to use against tanks or characters that you want to really whittle down quickly and apply Armor Shred to. Fennec also has a leader ability called Lone Fox, and this one's kind of wonky. I'm not quite sold on it yet. You get boosts to your max health, protection, defense, and offense depending on how many characters you didn't bring into battle. So basically, if you bring her in by herself, you'll get big boosts. If you bring in 2 other allies, you'll get a few less boosts, that sort of thing. Her contract requires 20 debuffs being dispelled or expired from bounty hunter or scoundrel allies. Now, this is where it gets kind of weird because you need allies, you need characters to get debuffs for that contract to be fulfilled, but also the more allies you bring, the weaker the leadership ability is. The payout for fulfilling the contract basically gives you 20% defense and overconfident to all bounty hunter and scoundrel allies, which is a good thing, of course, but really for what it takes to get this off, other than very specialized instances, I'm not too impressed with this. Maybe there's a better use for this than I can think of right now, and maybe it involves Boba Fett, Scion of Django, who's going to be very important to her kit when he is finally able to be unlocked. But ultimately, as of right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of benefits for this leadership ability. I guess the idea is you could undersize a squad in GAC, but even then, she's not particularly fast. Even with all these health and protection and defense boosts, her survivability isn't that great. The offense doesn't go up enough by herself. I'm just not too impressed with this, although there are very specialized uses for it. Her unique ability, Making an Impression, is an interesting boost to offense. She'll gain 10% offense stacking until the end of the encounter whenever she gains tenacity up. That bonus is doubled if the Mandalorian Beskar armor is a living ally, if Boba Fett, Scion of Django, is the leader. Anyway, she's basically going to gain some offense from this. And then the Zeta ability gives her 20% turn meter when an ally loses overconfident. Now, Fennec is actually pretty slow, particularly for a bounty hunter. So this TM boost is pretty important. And also, this is a faction that doesn't really have a lot of TM gain outside of, say, the Mandalorian himself, who I will recommend as an ally here. And finally, we have her payout, which whenever she gets it, she will receive 15% crit chance, 25% crit damage, and Seasoned Veteran until the end of the battle, which cannot be copied, dispelled, or prevented. That is her personal buff that was introduced with her character, and it's probably the most important part of her payout. It gives her the ability to ignore taunts, and then when she uses her special ability, I Don't Miss, she will inflict an additional stack of Armor Shred, and the ability cannot be evaded. And that is her kit. Now, the things to take away from this are, well, there's a couple. It's a complicated kit, but also a very basic one. In battle, you only have 2 abilities, so it's quite easy to actually play with her. The setup, on the other hand, requires a little bit more getting the most out of her. But the gist of it is she will help you get a payoff off quicker if she's under a bounty hunter lead, a particular bounty hunter lead, or if you're just using her under a Beskar Mando lead, she will help him get more Whistling Birds off because of the multi-attacks. She also spreads the debuff, which is actually a buff, Overconfident to the team, which gives offense speed and evasion while at the cost of defense. And if you've given her the Zeta on her Making an Impression ability, that means that she will start gaining quite a bit of turn meter once her allies start losing that Overconfident. And that happens fairly regularly, helping overcome some of her speed deficiencies. Next up, let's talk Synergies. Fennec, of course, synergizes with anyone who has a scoundrel lead or a bounty hunter lead, so you could really use her with either leader. Kira's a great scoundrel leader. But there are a couple of lead abilities that she's perfectly tailored for using. I'll get the non-bounty hunter lead out of the way, and that is Beskar Mando. He's actually just a scoundrel. He's not a bounty hunter. His lead gives maximum health, protection, and offense, which she, of course, always benefits from. And if you have the Zeta, scoundrel allies gain 2% turn meter whenever an enemy takes damage. That means whenever you use the basic with Fennec Shand, everyone's going to gain 10% turn meter. That's big, that helps. She goes in great there. But it doesn't necessarily make perfect use of her kit. And I think she's better suited, honestly, under a bounty hunter lead if you have the bounty hunters for it. If you don't, and you just happen to have this character built up, great. Stick her under a Beskar Mando lead. She'll do just fine. For actual bounty hunters, there are a few leads that she does specifically well with, and those tend to be the leadership abilities that require a payout which hits specific amount of times. Bosk has been the ultimate bounty hunter lead forever now, since he came out, and he's perfect for Fennec Shand because his leadership ability to get the contract fulfillment, you have to damage the weakest enemy 10 times. Okay, well, if you use her basic against the weakest enemy once, that means you're getting 5 ticks towards that, and you're halfway there. The other leadership ability where this comes into play is under Dengar's lead. Now, Dengar has become a little more prominent over the last several months because he is a requirement for the Executor, which is the biggest fleet in the game right now. His leadership ability says bounty hunter allies have 50% health steal. In addition, all enemies have minus 50% critical damage. When Dengar's, of course, in the leader sub, blah, 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 damage the healthiest enemy 10 times. So much like under Bosk's leadership ability, which is damage the weakest enemy, this is damage the healthiest 10 times. Fennec uses one basic ability that's going to give you 5 ticks towards this contract. That's huge. Once you get the payout for the reward on this contract, all enemies have minus 20% offense for the rest of the battle. And of course, you get all payouts activated. This is big. I think this is going to be a much more used leadership ability going forward. Just because of the ability to take some offense and some crit damage down, we now have defense a lot higher than it is. So this is a really cool leadership ability. And if you have a lot of bounty hunters and scoundrels built up, relict, whatever stage of the game you're in where they're usable, then you're going to be able to split some teams up here. And in fact, I'll get into my team comps later, my preferred team comps. I think you can now separate it where Bosk and Django and several other bounty hunters have their own team, which is pretty good. This secondary team, though, with Dengar and Fennec Shand, is going to be a pretty damn good bounty hunter team. So I think this is probably my favorite leadership ability to use Fennec Shand under, simply because it's making better use of other characters that maybe didn't quite have the use that we wanted earlier on. Outside of the leadership abilities, I think one of the most important characters you can put with Fennec Shand is going to be the Mandalorian, the original one, not Beskar Mando, because in his special ability, he deals physical damage to target enemy and calls another target bounty hunter to assist. So basically, that allows you to call Fennec and get 6 hits off on whatever your payout might be, let's say under Dengar's lead. And because he has bounty hunter's resolve, he can ignore taunt from the beginning of the battle. So if you have a fast Mandalorian who goes before anyone else, you can immediately call Fennec to assist, and boom, you've got 6 ticks towards your payoff done. And that is massive. I keep saying it, but that's so big for getting a payoff out. And then, because he, of course, has the disintegrate ability, once he gets the payoff off, you can take care of some major teams. Darth Revan Malak would be pretty easy to take out with this group. A lot of teams that require you to do massive damage, you can kind of do it with this team because bounty hunters do that, and you have the insta-kill ability here with the Mandalorian. Another interesting bounty hunter synergy that I want to point out is with Cad Bane. Now, Cad Bane, of course, with his payout activated, actually gains quite a bit of evasion, 25%. Fennec Shand, whenever she passes out Overconfident, that will add 15% evasion to that character. So it's really easy to get the Overconfident, debuff off out there. So if Cad Bane has that, he already has 40% evasion right then and there. Now, if he's also relict, his relic abilities, his mastery, actually gives you additional evasion. He's going to be a pain in the ass to deal with because he's going to be hard to hit. You're not going to be able to hit him unless you have additional accuracy via mastery or via an accuracy arrow, which not many people use, of course. Last thing I want to mention here with Synergies is that I haven't covered Boba Fett, Scion of Django yet. And I'm recording this in the middle of November, so we're still 4 to 8 weeks away from actually seeing anyone unlock the character. I know we just wrapped up Conquest 10. I got my max crate, so I'll be right there to unlock him when it happens. But he has a lot of things that will change up the Bounty Hunter faction because he is essentially going to make them like a GL squad because of the boosts that he gives in Territory War. Other modes probably will still have uses, but not quite as great of uses as he will in Territory War. Fennec likely winds up on the new Boba Fett's team because within her kit, she actually has some ties to him. Do you remember the 10% offense boost she gets whenever she gains tenacity up? Well, not only does Boba Fett, Scion of Django, give a whole bunch of tenacity up, she also has on that same unique ability listed that number is doubled if Boba Fett is in the leader slot. And she also gains Bounty Hunter's Resolve, which is, of course, a free revive. And that is massive. So she will definitely plug in there. Unfortunately, until we see it in action, we just don't know exactly what it's going to be like, though. All right, let's talk modding. And this is actually quite straightforward because there's not a whole lot going on here. You don't need potency because she's not really applying any debuffs. You could use some tenacity, but I wouldn't necessarily make that a focus. She's an offensive hitter. She's an attacker. So you want to give her either an offense set with a crit damage triangle, crit damage set, something along those lines. That way you're pumping out some extra damage. She also needs a lot of speed. However, if you have the Zeta, because you will be losing overconfident periodically. You'll be gaining an extra 20% turn meter. Speed isn't necessarily the most important thing in the world for her. And since her base speed is so low, your speed set actually isn't giving you the benefit that it would on a faster character who's naturally faster, such as the Mandalorian. I would rather give him my speed mods. That way he can take a turn first, call her to assist, then you've got a whole bunch of points towards your payout. As far as whether you should use an offensive set or a crit damage set, it's mostly dealer's choice, whatever mods fit best out of your set. However, what I will say is if you're not using a character like Grief or someone who gives crit chance up, then you might consider going with an offensive set instead because her crit chance is so low because it's all based on special damage. You're probably not going to crit as much as you would like prior to getting your payout. For example, if you use the Grief Karga ability where he calls the entire team to assist and you kill someone, you get a ton of buffs, including crit chance up, and that helps you to start doing the critical hits. So if you're not going to go with a little extra crit chance or a character like Grief, then you should probably focus instead on offensive mods. As for the specific mods themselves, I would go with a speed arrow. I mean, you still want her to be taking turns fairly regularly, and you can't really completely forego speed, so you'll definitely want that there. I'd take a crit damage triangle. Again, you can go offense if you don't think you're going to have enough crit chance up or anything going around or crit chance on your character. You'll want an offense cross, and then as far as the circle goes, again, dealer's choice. She doesn't really get a whole lot based on health versus protection. If you have the 6-dot mods for health, usually health is a little bit better just because of health steal and other reasons that you can actually gain a little more health. But for the most part, this just doesn't matter. If you're under a boss lead, it's probably smarter to go a little bit protection because he gives bonus protection. But again, really, it doesn't matter a whole lot, just based on what you have on hand. It's time to talk dream teams, and I'm already 20 minutes into this video, so I'm going to start wrapping this thing up, but it's really important to give you a couple of teams that I think will work exceptionally well with Fennec. And of course, she works with any scoundrel or bounty hunter lead, but not all of them take full advantage of her distinct uses, including Aura Singh's lead, which requires you to use an ability while buffed 10 times. Well, you're not going to get the perk of multiple hits on one attack, giving you multiple ticks towards the payout with that. It does, however, work with Jango's lead, the Mandalorian's lead, Bosk, Dengar, etc., etc. However, there are a couple that I think are a little more important than others. My first dream team is going to be a Bosk lead alongside Fennec, the Mandalorian, Grief Karga, and then really the fifth is just a dealer's choice. You can choose whoever you have left as far as bounty hunters. Jango is an elite character to use here. However, I personally find Jango having use all over the place, so maybe I don't want to use him in this team because he's not entirely necessary for it. Boba works great here too because he double taps on the basic. Again, he does a lot of damage. Maybe I can use him with a different bounty hunter team or scoundrel team and save that spot here for someone that, just can fill a spot because this isn't entirely necessary to the team. We've already gotten the most important characters in here. So as far as the fifth goes, I would say Jango and Boba are probably the best. The next step would be someone who can do an AoE and hit the weakest enemy without having to target them. So that includes Dengar, IG-88. And then from there, I would say, well, we've got the Bosk lead, which gives you extra health and protection recovery when you apply or try to apply a debuff, which means Greedo's great here, Zam's great here. You can even put Cad Bane down because, like I mentioned earlier, he gains so much evasion from overconfident, from his mastery increases, and of course from his payout. The whole premise of this team is that with the Bosk lead, to get the payout, you just have to hit the weakest enemy 10 times. If you're going up against a team that has an auto-taunting tank or a tank that taunts fairly quickly or a fast team that has a tank, then you might have a little bit more trouble getting the payoff out. That's why Mando is here. He can call any bounty hunter to assist, and he ignores taunt thanks to bounty hunter's resolve. That means if you have a fast Mando, all you have to do is call Fennec to assist against the weakest enemy, and you're 6/10 of the way to your payoff. You've got an AoA on this team, depending on who your fifth is. You've got Grief here calling assists, healing. You've got Fennec doing her multi-attacks, and then eventually when you get the payout off, you're going to be able to have Mando insta-killing characters with his Disintegrate ability. This team probably doesn't do a ton of damage if you don't have Jango or Boba as the 5th right out of the gate. However, once you do get the payout finished and the contract out there, then you're going to start doing damage. Fennec really starts boosting up once you get the contract out. And that's not just because of her payout, that's also because Grief. If you manage to kill an enemy while using his multi-assist attack, you're going to gain a ton of buffs. You get the same thing with Mando, who's passing out crit chance and crit damage up across the board. So even without Jango Boba, you're really going to be ramping up and doing enough damage once you get to the payout. It's obviously a good team, but I think there's a better way to use your bounty hunters if you have a bunch of them. If those are your 5 bounty hunters, great, that's fine. You can just stick with that. But if you have a decent amount of relics or high levels across the board, I think there's a better way to separate them. And that involves my second dream team, which involves a Dengar lead. Then we've got Fennec, Mando, and Grief. Those 3 pretty much go together from now on. Well, until we get Boba Fett, Sign of Jango released anyway. And then another 5th. You can pretty much pick your whatever bounty hunter you want for that 5th. Dengar's lead, of course, is very similar to Bossk's in that you have to damage the healthiest enemy 10 times. Now, you can take this team a couple of different directions. If you're going against a team, say you're using this on offense, and you're going against a team that's an auto-taunting tank, that tank probably is the healthiest enemy already. So you don't really have to worry about skirting a taunt because you're going to be able to go right after them and get that payout activated. So if that's the case, you can put a 5th character in there that's just another attacker. Obviously, without Bossk in this team, we've lost our tank, so you're running a little bit more risk of just being obliterated if it gets out of hand. Again, against an auto-taunting team or a team that you don't have to worry about finding out who's the healthiest enemy and you know you can get your payout off quickly, don't necessarily worry about having a tank here. You can put Cad as your 5th. You can put Zam. It doesn't matter. You can just put an offensive-based character in that 5th slot. However, if you are concerned that maybe I'm not going to be able to get the payout off as quickly as I'd like, I need someone who's going to be able to soak up some damage, I'll point out that L337 goes great here. She's a scoundrel, so she'll be able to get the overconfident buff and to help lose it, essentially giving Fennec Shand some extra TM. But she's also an insanely tanky tank. She's such a good tank. And under a Dengar lead, bounty hunter allies have plus 50% health steal. In addition, all enemies have minus 50% critical damage. And then once you get the payout off, all enemies have minus 20% offense for the rest of the battle. This is just going to make L337 even tankier, and she's going to be able to really weather the storm here. And once again, because we're not using Bossk here, we're probably not using Jango or Boba, you can save those characters for a separate bounty hunter team that's already going to be really good on its own. So this is really the way I'm going to start using the team for a while until we see what Boba Fett Sign of Jango looks like or any other characters they release and just kind of go from there. All right, let's wrap this thing up and go ahead and give you the conclusion and my consensus ranking of Fennec Shand. She is, I think, an important part to the Bounty Hunter faction going forward, certainly because she will have a lot of synergy with Boba Fett, Sign of Jango, who is essentially the galactic legend of the Bounty Hunter squad once he comes out. But also because if you can't get the contract fulfilled, Bounty Hunters tend to struggle a lot. And she really, really helps expedite that process under a lot of leads. At the start of a fight, she doesn't do a ton of damage, but by the end of the fight, she's racking up some huge hits. She's not particularly fast, however, thanks to the Zeta, once you start losing some of the overconfident debuff, you're going to start gaining a bunch of TM, which helps make up for that inherent slowness. Not only can she fit on good bounty hunter teams, she fits on good scoundrel teams, so she has a lot of versatility. I think this is a very important character that might be getting overlooked because it isn't as impactful as, say, Maul or Commander Ahsoka Tano, some of these big-time, epic confrontation level characters. Now, if you're in the early part of the game, less than, say, 2 million GP, you're probably not going to focus on Fennec Shand unless you just really love bounty hunters. If you're in the mid-game, you're still probably not going to focus on her unless you just really love bounty hunters. But towards the end of the game, this is a character that I think a lot of people need to go after because thanks to Jedi Master Kenobi, thanks to the Executor, a lot of people are being forced to upgrade bounty hunters. Now, I've had bounty hunters upgraded for a long time because I just like the faction, so she's great for me. However, if you're one of those people who just has a bunch of them built up, you're not really using them, Fennec can take them from being a pretty solid team to a really, really good offensive team, and a team that I think does have some defensive versatility, particularly in that Dengar scenario that I just described. I think if you're not actively working towards a Galactic Legend and upgrading those characters, Fennec is a perfectly acceptable character to start working on to make those bounty hunters better. So I think overall, I'm going to give Fennec Shand a B+. And that is probably a little high, but it's just because she makes the bounty hunter faction that much better that I think she's going to warrant that kind of a rating. And with that, it's finally time to stop making this video. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I appreciate all of you sticking with me for this year plus since I last made some Galaxy of Heroes content. I hope you liked it. I will be putting more content on this channel, of course, Galaxy Heroes related stuff, but also Boob Tube Boys related stuff. That's one of my podcasts available on the Bootu Inc network. We also host several fantasy baseball podcasts. That's where I make a bulk of my work, but all kinds of stuff available on the Bootu Inc network. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.